as people come in. As you come in, please make sure that you change your name if you're able with your district. That would be very helpful for us and for others to know where we are so we can network with each other. We thank you for coming today. We're very excited. We are, if you want to go to the next slide real quick. If you would like, there's a QR code and also a link for today's presentation. It's also going to be in the chat in a moment. It's going to be dropped in. We thank you for coming. We're very excited about our session today. And if you missed last session, we have a link for that as well, which is the materials. If you click that link, it takes you to the website, our Google site that we created that has a link to last session, also the previous sessions for the year as well. So you can catch what you might have missed. And then this here is also a link for attendance. So we're going to give you a minute or so to either scan the QR code, click on the link, and join the and sign in for the attendance. This is what is going to be linked to you receiving a certificate of attendance today. So it's important that it is filled out as well. So I'll give you all about a minute to click on it and sign in.
That's right.
The link is also getting put into the chat in a moment as well, if you weren't able to click on it. So while you're filling that out, just a reminder of who is with us today from the SST and the ESC. We, in the room with us here, you'll see either these people in the room here on the OWL that has about 4 or 5 people on it, one screen, or logged in with us today. So this is our agenda. So our last network, we got some good feedback, and we talked as a team as well that everybody really wanted more time to talk with each other. They needed more time to actually hear what other districts are doing with each other. And so we kind of rearranged our typical format that we've been using. So that way it allows everybody more time to be able to get familiar with each other and really share resources that they're using within the districts. So we're going to have the welcome that we're doing now, and then we're going to review the data that we've been reviewing, and then we're going to talk a little bit, have you guys have a breakout earlier on to be able to network about what you're currently using for data-based decision in your buildings. So that way, an opportunity for you guys to get to know each other a little bit more earlier on. And then we're going to come back and talk about how we analyze that data. And again, another opportunity to network after that and really get a chance to practice analyzing the data. So that way you guys can bring that back to your districts and kind of share how you're using it within the district as well. And then finally, we'll do the state updates and resources. And then the 10 to 10:30 time is the district considerations. So on how the database decision-making works at the district level. So again, the purpose of the PBIS network is to really have coaching sessions to help schools implement and sustain PBIS, to establish positive school climates for staff and students, and leading to improved academic performance and safety. And so we're going to look at some of that data that really allows us to see whether or not it is improving that academic performance and safety, as well as the coaching network is designed to provide you that chance to be able to work together to collectively and discuss and share best practices. And so we're hoping with this new format, you'll feel that you have a little bit more of that opportunity as well. So the first thing we're going to do before we really jump into data-based decision making for the TFI and what we're doing is we wanted to ask you, as the network, would you like to be virtual or in person starting in January? So because of COVID and everything, we've been in virtual since, well, for a long while now. Ever. It feels like forever. But we wanted to get your feedback of whether or not you would like to change it from being just virtual into a more in-person. So we're going to be posting a poll. Thank you, Brian, for putting it up. And if you would please take the poll and we'll use that to inform whether or not January's network. So that December's network will still be virtual, and then we would change it in January if we did. We'll leave it open. We're almost a couple more seconds. We'll leave it open. If anyone didn't get a chance to vote.
Okay. My screen.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your feedback, and we're going to use that. We'll let you know for sure, based on everybody's feedback, what we do. But again, December's will be for sure in person, and then we'll see. Virtual. Thank you. And then we'll see about January. All right. Thank you. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about our data for the region. This month, we are focusing on, I'm going to just make it bigger on my screen because I can't keep looking at that. Sorry. All right. Is 1.12, 1.13 for tier 1, which is the discipline data overall, and then database decision-making. And then in tier 2, it's 2.3, 2.11 for student performance data and screening. And then at the third tier, it's data systems and database decision-making as well. And so this is just an average score of all the scored rubrics within in region 3. And so you can kind of see where the districts that apply for recognition are the strongest, and then where more support might be needed in terms of understanding the database decision making. We go to the next slide. It delves down just like we have in the past networks to look at those who applied for bronze and then received it, and then those who applied for bronze but did not yet get recognition. And so, and then as well for silver, and then the next slide we'll be looking at gold and where they look, where they scored in terms of gold. So what I'd like to do before we move on, it's a lot of data, a lot of graphs. We're going to take about 2 minutes to look at it. And then at the end of 2 minutes, I'm going to say go, and everybody's going to put their initial thoughts of the data in the chat. Let's stay. We're going to stay on this. Maybe go to the tier 1 and 2, or the average overall. Let's do that. This is the average overall. We'll leave on the screen. If you wanted to look at the other ones, you could click on the slide deck that was shared. Okay, so if you would like to, please put in the chat your initial impressions based on the TFI data from the rubrics. What are you noticing? What areas do you think that it helps you realize that you want to grow, that there might be some positives from the data? Behaviors are being documented, but maybe not fully used to make decisions. Thank you, Maggie, for sharing. I would say I see the same thing because the software is easier to have discipline data available because of screening programs, kits. It's easier to get that documentation. I like that. Teams not meeting and discussing data. Weakest area is data collection for tier 2. Would be helpful for districts to share out how they are collecting, what type and form. It's easier to have data systems than find the time to use it for good analysis. Thank you everyone for sharing. So looking at data is very hard. It is, and behavioral data is even harder for a lot of us as teachers and educators. We're not as used to looking at it as we are academic data. And so this network is really an opportunity for us to, have a chance to talk to each other as districts of what's being used and how we're using it. So Chrissy, I really like that question. So thank you for that. So we're going to go ahead and look into data a little bit. If you can't hear the sound, please let us know. We have a little short video.
Middle school located in a typical town of Fauville. Lakeside doesn't always have the best scores, but it does have an amazing staff.
Welcome to another fabulous day of professional development.
This is Assistant Principal Carl Hyde.
Excuse me, Dorothy, thought we said no kids at the teacher training.
Son, please, I will call my union rep if
You know what? I love your children, they're all beautiful. Your principal brought me in because he needed an expert in professional development. This room needs a little infusion of excitement. I think I know just the thing. That's right, it's data. What else can drive all teachers' actions? Data. Oh, data. Come on, give me that data. From Sunday to Saturday, you best not forget that data. Oh, data. Data, that's it. Come on, give me that data. From Sunday to Saturday, everyone give me that data.
Thus began the arduous task of breaking down last year's scores.
Why do you hate us?
This is English.
So hopefully that encourages you to be excited to look at some data today. So, like I said at the beginning, we're going to be focusing on data systems overall, really looking at 1.12, 1.13 in tier 1, and 2.3 in the TFI for tier 2, and 3.12 and 3.13, I believe, in tier 3. So when we're looking at data, it's really looking at the different types of data. So we often talk about when we're, sitting at TBTs, when we're in the building, we look at data in terms of outcome data, and we're looking for, is the plan resulting in the goals that we want? And we're looking at, we often talk about looking at office discipline referrals or minor incident referrals or behavior incident referrals, really what is happening with the students, but it's always important to look at the fidelity data as well. And how well are we as the adults in the building implementing what needs to be done and agreed upon those strategies, are they actually being done? So we want to really make sure that it allows us to keep on our fingers the pulse that's what's going on for the best decision making that we're making with the students. It's important to make sure that we're looking at data not just to look at it and to admire it, but really use it to make those decision making things. So if you look here, these are examples of student outcome data, and that link will take you to a document that shows you the student outcome data and then also the sample fidelity data. I really like this document just because it looks beyond the typical outcome data and fidelity data that we usually use in PBIS. We often for fidelity, we use the two big ones, which is the TFI and the SAS, but it really gives a list of some other things that you can also use, as well as the outcome data. Like I said, we often look at office discipline referrals or minor incident referrals, and we don't look beyond a lot of the time. And so what's really nice about this, it gives some ideas of additional sources of data examples. As I said, there's also the implementation fidelity data examples as well that go beyond the TFI and the SAS as well. And then this here is really nice document, I can't think of the guidebook, thank you, it's written right there, of the disproportionality and how you can use that data to help with disproportionality in terms of behavioral referrals, expulsion, suspension of students within our schools as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually break into network groups now. And similar to previous sessions, it's still going to be broken up into elementary and early childhood, middle and high school, or tier 2 and 3, and you have your choice. But we're going to look at, sorry, I went ahead and talked about what the breakout rooms would look like, but if we go back to the question, this is what I want you to think about while you're in the breakout rooms, are what are some resources and tools and data that are helpful when you are building up PBIS. So what are you using currently? So when you go into the breakout rooms, you know, introduce yourselves, because you might know some of you guys from previous networks, but we really want you guys to start to get to know each other, because as you keep coming every month, but then also start sharing what do you currently use. And then you can use the 3 documents that are linked into the presentation, and that should be also in the chat as well, to help you kind of think about what do you currently use and what would be things that you would want to have. So, and there's also this next document is called the Student Outcomes and Implementation. I'm sorry, that is called the Supporting PBIS Through Data Analysis. And that you can click on that to fill out and help guide those questions as you are networking.
Before I push out the rooms, I just want to make mention on this slide, I just put it in the chat as well. So the bottom link is a Google Doc in which you'll select one person to kind of record. You'll see it's broken up by the groups as well. So early childhood and elementary, middle school and high school, and then tier 2, tier 3, you all have a space to kind of write down the thoughts from the group. After 10 minutes, I'm going to bring everyone back and be prepared to share out. So during that time when you're in your groups, maybe have someone be selected to be the presenter when they come back. All
So
right?
you should have a facilitator to help run it, a note keeper, and then a share out person, a share outer.
So we have tier 1 elementary and early childhood, tier 1 middle school and high school, then tier 2, tier 3 all grades. So you're going to select the appropriate place. The rooms are now open, and once everyone is in a spot, I will start that timer.
Is it available?
Is it
Is it available?
available?
Is it available? I'm gonna see if another one's there, but early childhood.
Again, if you didn't catch that, you're going to select a group that's most appropriate for your position, whether it's tier 1 or tier 1 at early childhood and elementary, or tier 1 at the middle school, high school, or tier 2, tier 3. So
I don't have the option to select anything.
No, the note at the top says you're open breakout rooms. Please wait to be assigned.
okay, Chrissy, where do you want to go? I can throw you in a room.
3.
3, gotcha.
This is Kimberly Norris. Can you put me in elementary, please?
Rhonda, Danielle, do you guys want elementary? Good morning.
Yeah, early childhood. Yep.
Thank you. Hey, Danielle.
Hi. I made it. Didn't have a sub.
I know, Jillian gave me the heads up. I'm glad you're here.
Ms. Norris, you said elementary, correct? All right.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Danielle to early childhood. Word one. Megan, do you want to go somewhere?
Yeah, I was just looking at the list of who's where. Is there a place where we don't have an ESC
Well-
person? I mean, I can go.
Behavior data through whatever online platform the school district uses. We look at attendance data, outside counseling data, clinic referrals. So we try to take a look at the whole child because they could be struggling in one area, but not another.
Awesome. Great point. Anything else from that breakout room 3? Well, I just want to say thank you for participating. I know sometimes as we break out and we do these conversations with some people that you don't know, participation varies. So based on this document and based on the share out, I feel like it seemed to be very successful. And so that document is there. Again, it's in the chat. So refer to it if you need it. If you got something that you liked and maybe take to your group, go ahead.
So just like you guys chatted about in the breakouts, there's a lot of different data sources that you could be using, right? And really what we want to get to is a point where we have the right data at the right time, right? And not only that, but that we present it in the right format to our team so that we can have a better discussion about it. If you have a data manager on your team, that person can play a really significant role in the efficiency of the discussions held regarding data during your team meeting, right? If you have someone who can bring a particular data set laid out in a specific format, then teams are going to be much more efficient at diving deeper into the data analysis and making decisions based on it. So keep that in mind. Are we doing the breakout again here, or is that
Yeah, I think it got
coming up?
moved. No, that got put there by accident.
Okay, I was going to say we just did breakout.
Oh.
So
Sorry, really excited about breakout.
We really wanted
we will go back in a breakout room here shortly, but not quite yet. That was too soon. So our 5-step process here that you see on the screen kind of gives us a guide for what our data discussion could look like. This is just a sample process. You don't have to use this one. But we really want to get away from having just big statements based on only anecdotals and feelings, right? Because that's not going to truly lead to improved outcomes. Instead, we really can use our data to identify a specific problem, a precise problem statement that then we can address in a specific way. So which problem we address first also might depend, on the impact it's having on the learning environment as a whole. So if you open that worksheet, we'll drop it in the chat for you, this Swiss drill down worksheet. You'll see that what you do is you start with, one problem, we're going to call it. And you could, in our breakout, someone mentioned a problem that has come up recently is horseplay, right? So you could start with, okay, first we're going to jump into the type of behavior, horseplay, right? Then you think about, what could you filter next? Is there a location? So we talked about this too, right? Like a lot of times the horseplay takes place during transition time. And also during dismissal, right? So that would be your next, right? You've got a location and now you've got, time of day, right? When does it happen? It happens a lot during dismissal. So you see how you kind of keep filtering down to get, really to a smaller problem set that you're looking at, because this is truly going to help you identify trends in the behavior so that you can address it more appropriately, right? And you want to always remember too, when you get to the bottom of this worksheet, there's a space for your precise problem statement and your goal. So you really want to think about, is our goal about decreasing horseplay, or is our goal about what we want to see happening instead, right? So are we teaching them some sort of missing or lagging skill in that moment? Versus just thinking about decreasing the problem behavior. So we really want to think about, what type of SMART goal that would be, because that's going to allow us to track it, more effectively and more efficiently. And then at the end, you can see a lot of different things to keep in mind when we're thinking of a solution, right? This is super helpful. Is there something we can do to prevent the behavior? Can we reteach the behavior? Can we increase our acknowledgement, right? One of the best ways to change behavior is to actually increase reinforcement. So can we increase that reinforcement or that acknowledgement when we're seeing the expected behavior, happen in place of our problem behavior? And then, there's some other options there too to kind of help us think in that solutions-oriented mindset. And then lastly, we obviously want to think of, how are we going to measure the difference? If we see this influx in horseplay, we make some changes, we come up with that precise problem statement and some solution-oriented thoughts. How are we going to know if it's successful, right? How are we going to be able to indicate progress? So you want to keep that in mind too. Any thoughts or what questions do you guys have on the drill down worksheet? Have you guys used this before?
Can I share?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just going to say is that I think this is awesome as a former school counselor and also a former social worker in some of the districts that are here. I will say that I wish we had something more like this to be able to utilize. So I think it's really well done.
And if you see here, just so you know, that document does have a sample of one that was done to help you understand how to drill down.
And that referral summary, systems and students, like over here. This came from Swiss, but I think Megan has done such a nice job presenting that you don't need Swiss as the paid platform to get this information. Chrissy mentioned Google Forms, and Google Forms can filter information very similarly. But what I do want to remind everyone, especially as those of you work through the advanced tiers, tier 2, tier 3, that if you drill down so small that you have less than 10 kids thinking about in your data set, that's not a tier 1 data conversation. So then your group gets so small that maybe you bring that group of students for consideration for your tier 2 team. So it really keeps a healthy balance. I know some of your districts, the data systems really focus on student behavior logs. And if that's the case, it's really hard to think big picture when once you get a kid name, all of us in education go to a kid solution. And so really at your tier 1 level, thinking system-wide, and I love that this drill down worksheet puts it on there, because if you go too small, you'll be missing the big picture and you won't really get as much leverage of your intervention.
We talked about this in the breakout room I was in. A lot of times it's referred to as the power of 10. So you see if there's more than 10 students involved, that's where you see that systems box would be checked. And then if it's less than 10, like Stephanie said, you would be checking that box students and addressing it, maybe at the tier 2 level versus the tier 1. But just something to keep in mind, if there's more than 10 students who are presenting with that same problem, it's worth looking back at, what are you doing at that tier 1 level to address it? Helps us think about developmentally appropriate practices as well, or transitions too long for a kindergartner. Awesome point. Thanks for adding in the chat, everybody. So we're going to move into pulling in our tier 2 thoughts here. So if we're thinking about data in that tier 2 mode, you see on screen, we've pulled 2.3, right? Which is kind of the first thought about data that comes up when we're looking at our tier 2 TFI. And this piece, this feature really suggests that we collect and review data to indicate when there might be a greater need, right? For that small bucket of students. So there's fewer than 10 students, right, exhibiting that horseplay. Maybe we need to look at, is there a tier 2 solution here? And there should be a process in writing that's on the rubric how you would get a 2, that you have like a formal process that helps us maintain consistency when connecting kids to tier 2 supports. Oftentimes, we have a lot of things we look at, we have some discussion about it, but to really solidify that process, we really want to have it in writing, right? That shows what multiple data sources we're using. And then the team, can decide on what that criteria is going to be. I know Chrissy shared out, that tier 2, tier 3 discussion that they had in the breakout and gave some examples of kind of what they talked about in terms of what data they're looking at for this tier 2 piece.
Hey, Megan, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
All of those behavior data points that I was speaking about, we have in a tier 2 referral form that the teachers or whoever's concerned, the parent fills out, and it's brought to tier 2 for discussion before anything's implemented.
Awesome. Well, and then you have a record of it, right? You also have those data points down. So when you go back and look to see if a tier 2 support's effective, you can go back to those data points, right? And you can see, well, how did they land here in the first place, and have some of those data points changed? So it's not only, if we move to the next slide, it's not only thinking about how we get into tier 2, but also how they get out, right? We don't want kids to live in tier 2. We don't only want them to climb up the triangle, right? It's okay to go back down to tier 1 and not need that level of support anymore. So if you see here, just some more thoughts on, what do we do to monitor progress or to indicate when someone's successful at that tier 2 level, right? Once our criterion's created and then we match those students to that higher level of support, this progress monitoring data piece becomes crucial. How many times do you guys have kids maybe land and check out for an unclear amount of time? Like, okay, you get check out. And it's just, it's not really specified. Well, how long are they going to get check out? How do we know when they're successful in check out, right? Is this like a yearly thing? How often do we provide social skills groups based on the number of lessons in the curriculum we're using, right? Hey, you get this social skills group because you're having trouble, socializing with peers. It's all about friendship skills. I've got 12 lessons here. And after we do those 12 lessons, like, you're out, right? So we have to think more strategically around, how do we measure that success? And then, really just also to celebrate, we look at it because we want to celebrate small successes, right? Maybe a student isn't super responsive to a tier 2 support. We want to adjust, what we're providing if they don't respond or if the problem starts to reappear, right? And we always want to keep in mind that 6 to 8 weeks truly is the minimal time for an intervention to have an opportunity to work. I know we want to kind of revisit, some of these more often than that, but truly, and this is research-based, right? According to a 2009 study in the European Journal of Social Psychology, it takes 18 to 254 days for a person to form a new habit, right? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for them to solidify a replacement behavior. So, for that behavior to become an automatic, that replacement behavior, it takes an average of 66 days, right? So if we're looking at this every month at our tier 2 meeting, that's only 4 weeks. So was that enough time? So keep that in mind also. It does take time, but then if we look at the cost benefit analysis of the overall process, we're going to eventually spend less time managing that behavior if we're successfully able to shift or change behavior based on our effective intervention. So then we'll get those outcomes we were looking for, right? Reduced time out of class, less horseplay, fewer ODRs, right? Improved attendance, all of those outcomes that we really hope to achieve with our interventions and supports.
Hey, Megan, I would like to add just one thing regarding that, especially about behaviors that we're trying to change. And a lot of times when we think about our students, these are behaviors that sometimes they're not aware of, or maybe it's something that's, we think about the initiative of wanting to change. And so I always equate this to someone who wants to quit smoking and knowing the challenges of changing a behavior that they want to change, but it's extremely difficult to do. So that time frame of trying to change behavior, it can be a lengthy one. And so we're trying to change behavior that maybe some of our students don't even recognize it is an issue, or it's not brought up in a certain way. So I think that's kind of a trick as well. So I always think that changing behavior is a long road, and I know a lot of teachers and building administrators know that, but it's kind of that piece of wanting to make that change, but how do we support that throughout?
All right, so just so everybody knows, we're going to move towards the breakout rooms, but we do recognize that we are running over on time. So if you can stay, I think it would be a good discussion and a good opportunity to network for at least another 10 minutes in the breakout room and come back and share a little bit. If you cannot stay past the 10 o'clock hour and do the networking, we do ask that you would go on the slides to the evaluation and fill that out. So we'll put that in the chat now. Please stay. I think this would be a great opportunity. We're going to encourage you to, as in your groups, really look at some sample data and work on that drill down document as a group in tier 1, the tier 1 breakout rooms, and the tier 2 really talk about that screen, what you're using for screening to for entry and exit from the tier 2 team. Sorry, I know that I jumped in, but I just wanted to make sure that we respected everybody's time.
And we're going to still keep 3 breakout rooms. So we understand that early childhood settings may have different data criteria to look at as opposed to, the 8th graders in the very same building. So when you go to tier 1, we're going to still split by early childhood and elementary and secondary, and then tier 2, tier 3 as well. So you see kind of the prompts there. We do not have a place to take notes. We just wanted you guys to be able to share with each other some of your reactions, okay? When you get into your breakout rooms, if you are in group 1 or group 2, the next 2 slides are a sample data set for you to respond to, okay? If you have to leave at 10 o'clock, we have a lot of slides on updates and a lot of resources for you guys to click through on some of those data sample sets that we were talking about earlier on that big student outcome sheet and adult fidelity implementation sheet. So just click through, and hopefully some of that could be a help to your building or district-wide PBIS teams. Okay.
I'm going to open up the groups. Oh,
go ahead, Pam.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, can you tell me where I can find the slide deck or the link?
Yep, we'll paste it in. I'll paste it in right now. All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to open up the rooms. I'm going to hit this button. Hopefully everything works, fingers crossed. And then I'm also, if you have the jet at 10 o'clock, I'm also putting in an evaluation into the chat right now. So I'm going to open up all the rooms. Should be invited to go back to that breakout room. Pam, I'm going to put you up here with